Although the initial event was just to record memories to be used as documentation for a play, the recording of those memories by the people who came forward to take part, and the questions asked by the young children, were so powerful and so evocative that I decided to turn them into an exhibition. What follows is the Home Fires exhibition, which was installed here at Preston Hall Museum and ran for the week-long event.
It was the unknown. I think that's how it should be told.
And it was 11 o'clock on the 3rd of September, and it came over the news that war had been declared. As soon as it finished, every air raid siren went, and we all panicked.
When you saw things that were happening, you realised that life was going to change.
Unfortunately, we paid the penalty because in March 1941, the house was hit by a landmine, and my mother, father and brother were all killed.
I wanted to go in the army. I wanted to get my own back. That was the thing. Didn't know what I was looking forward to.
And the first recollection I had of it was an air raid siren, and Morning Minute we called it. And of course, try and imagine yourselves sort of being there at that particular time.
I had to go and get a letter from my dad saying I could join. So as soon as he said I could join, we joined up.
Do you remember how you ever felt
you were
towards?
told, or was it on the news, or?
You were really scared.
They built air raid shelters in the school grounds, and they were half underground and half on top of the ground, and they had great big mounds of earth on them with air shafts in the top. So we were all very scared in case a gas attack came, but it never did.
We were just as threatened as anywhere else, you know. You never knew where they were coming, and we always, I think, might be just me, but I feel that we were in an area that was hard to reach.
They decided to send a complete flight of our squadron over to Strathleigh, one of the aerodromes outside Rotterdam. One got back, so that wiped half of us out.
Yes, especially when you heard the chug-chug and you knew it wasn't one of our planes coming over, you know. And you just wondered where we were going to drop something next.
The worst thing was your own guns going off. They had static gun sights, but they also had mobile guns and searchlights, and they used to take them around different states, etc. And when they went off, the noise was absolutely horrendous.
But there was two lads, these lads were on the night before me, and their rockets just slid over the end of the tubes and exploded in front of the gun. So it killed the two lads on that gun.
The nearest bombs I can remember were just on the outskirts of Stockton, where, you know, where all the car showrooms and things are now. Just as the houses stopped, they dropped some bombs one night, and quite a few people died.
But when we got up to 10,000 feet and looked down, it was just like a lot of models. In the glow of all the flames and the things, you could see these planes crisscrossing.
I think about 200 guns with 400 rockets banging around them. They wouldn't be feeling very safe up there.
The thing that I have never got out of my mind was the noise and the scraping of that machine going across. But what we didn't know we were heading for a hedge, and the other side of the hedge was a normal garden and a cottage.
And then we had a lot of Americans and Canadians here. I mean, it's Teesside Airport in those days was called Goosepool because the Canadians were there. But it was fun and games, fun and games.
One lot on one night actually fired and hit the barrage balloon, and we got a cartoon sent onto the site showing the ATS girls crying as the balloon was coming down. So there was wartime fun as well.
Did you ever feel that changed to you?
Was it quite a hard life in the army?
Now that you've got all these wonderful wirelesses and things, in my day, in the war, the wireless was a different thing altogether.
I wandered in there. I had to find somewhere to sleep, at least for 1-2 nights. And lo and behold, all the old boys were there. The squadron had been, they'd been to North Africa, and they'd been all out and all do this, that and the other, and they'd come back there prior to being shifted.
And at the school I was at, they had shelters all in lines, and then in between the shelters, you all had a patch of ground that you cultivated, i.e. digging for victory, you know, growing your own veggies and things like that.
Things were insecure, but you did lots of things without sort of thinking about them.
They wouldn't have me back on flying. He went back on flying, but he was killed eventually.
It was strange how, although there's all this thunderous noise going around you, you see very few people. A plane came down, it was from Thornaby, and it landed on a farm on the side of the river. And the crew were killed, of course.
I wouldn't like to say I killed a lot of Germans. I didn't. I can honestly say now I think it was just 2 or 3.
Did what we had to. It was a case of you got on with it. I don't think anybody went round shaking like a leaf all the time. You know, you accept the fact that he could come over. You accept the fact he wouldn't come over. So you just took it as it. You know, just exactly as it came.
There was some sadness, but I think you remember the happy days.
Did you ever,
like part of the war that, you know, anything you heard on the news that you probably have got to know yourself a bit better?
When we heard the announcement that the war had ended, you just didn't know quite how high to jump, I think, really. It was lovely.
People were actually happy. They actually rejoiced when the news came on the radio that Hitler had taken cyanide and killed himself.
I think it's just like today.
Of course it is.
If something happens,
yes. You just do it.
Something happens that makes you do things, isn't it?
As your older brother, I order it.
You grow up very quickly, and you don't think about being brave or anything of that sort.
Each of our families thought we were sharing the shelter with each other, instead of which the 3 of us were as I say, roaming loose.
And we never went into the shelters in the street at night. We used to go and under the staircase at home, and Mum had a couple of seats in there and a trunk with extra clothes in and a bit of food. And if I'd been in 10 minutes, I used to say, "Mum, I'm hungry, what can I have to eat?"
Hitler had said at one point that he wanted peace, but people said, yes, he wants a piece of this and a piece of that. You know, each country, in other words.
When they lit the smoke screens in the streets, which were just a round can about 18 inches across, filled with, I don't know what, dirty oil or something, and they ignited it. They used to belch this smoke out and give a smoke screen coverage in the area.
How
did you ever,
like part of the war that, you know, anything you heard on the news that you probably have got to know yourself a bit better?
My first experience was watching a chap land at night, clip the undercar on the sandbags of a building, the bays, came down, thing burst into flames, and we just stood there and watched him burn to death.
I said I was going to get my own back. I was going to join the Home Guard.
I went on to munitions. I went to Aycliffe. We used to have to do 3 different shifts a week.
And I just wanted to get into the army to kill Germans.
I left school very early and went to work, and of course, working in those days, there was no men around, they were all away. So it meant that you had to take on a lot of responsibility.
You think of your own side being the right one, don't you?
She had a family totaling 6, and 5 of them had been wiped out, and she was the only survivor. And she was in deep, deep shock. And I must say that going into the room where she was took rather a bit of nerve, because it was so eerie.
There was a general spirit of friendship, you know, and they offered the hand of friendship. Most people, you know, wherever you were, it was great.
My parents had 2 evacuees, and I was older, so I didn't know. There were children like you went to school, and they had to adapt to go to school in our village.
There was wartime fun as well. You weren't all miserable. I thought we were all quite happy to get on with it, get on with the show.
And my favourite haunt was the station at Eaglescliffe. Now, when I say the station, I mean the railway station, because on the platform was a tiny little bathhouse, and it was there for travellers, and we knew the station master, and he used to ring us when they got a quarter of beer in, and we used to go there.
You walk from the Modern down to the Green and back again, and we called it the Monkey Parade. Lads walk that way and lasses walk that way, and if you clicked, well, you were all right.
Then when you started to move about a bit and you went to these seaside places, you couldn't get onto the beach near the water because there was all these rolls and rolls of barbed wire.
One bit I didn't like, everybody had ration books because nearly every kind of food you can think of was rationed, and meat was very, very scarce. So Dad's brother, Uncle Frank, used to go out into the fields and catch rabbits
The talking just didn't get anywhere after that between the nations, and Hitler was a bit of a nuisance, let's put it that way. You were able to put things better into perspective, I think, as we call it, and realise that it wasn't going to be there all your life. It was just this particular section.
I was in this hospital in Bruges when the news of the war ended.
I don't like the word proud, but I felt deeply grateful that I'd been able to help her in some very small way.
I knew my future wife from being 5-year-old. And then I met up with her again and we started courting, and that was it. The war experiences did give me more experience in life.
And I can still feel her arm, a hand stroking my arm when she said it, just those 2 words.
The one thing that I discovered, there's a word that's, I think, often wrongly used, comradeship.
Ladies looked further afield after the war. There were more opportunities. I'm sure there were.
Was there a memory?
Do you remember how you ever felt towards?
Was there a time when you were really scared?
You couldn't do anything. This was one of the awful things, very awful things I found, that you saw things and you were helpless. You couldn't do anything about it.
Thought we were going to bounce straight back, but we didn't, you know. We'd been in our families for donkey's ages, and, you know, but, I did some crazy things, I don't know.
It was the unknown. I think that's how it should be told.